Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. Today we have some I Don't Work Here Lady stories, and our first story of the day is by maryrosetudor. Ma'am, this is a food truck. Okay, so this is by far the most hilarious and quite annoying encounter that has ever happened. This didn't happen directly to me, but to the bemusement of the food trucker owner and her husband. I took my mom to the doctor today for an appointment, and at the hospital complex, there's a food truck that comes and serves food for the employees. I've seen it several times since. That's where my mom's doctor works. Since it was around lunchtime when my mom got done, she suggested that I go and ask if I could order some food from there. I go over there, and the woman in front of me is sounding irritated. I could even hear her even though I had my headphones in. I take them out like the sneaky witch I am, and here is the conversation, if you can call it that.
What do you mean you can't take me to my husband? He's sick.
Food truck owner will call Marisol. Lady, I told you, I just own this food truck. I can't take you nowhere.
Who is your boss?
I am. Sometimes my husband when he's in the mood.
But my husband is sick and you're here. Take me to my husband.
Dios mio, lady, get the freak out. Unless you want a burrito, I'm gonna call the cops. Karen just shut up and walked away after it seemed she wouldn't get her way. I got up to talk to Marisol. I didn't press into it because it wasn't my business, but Marisol said that Karen came up to her truck demanding that she take her to her husband who was sick. Not sure with what, just because they were on the hospital grounds. I got my food at my mom's. We ended up having a good lunch. I told my mom about it, and we laughed so hard. In a way, I kind of feel bad for the Karen. They seemed just kind of confused, even though it was kind of rude the way they were acting. If you were there, would you want to take some time and see if you couldn't help point Karen in the right direction so that they could find their husband? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by PipeThePippettor. I don't work here, lady, but I can read the labels for you. A few years ago, I was at the grocery store with my elderly mother. I left her on the canned goods section as I went to another aisle to grab other items. As I was walking back, I see her asking an older teenager, "Girl, if there was a can of X with low sodium." The girl, who up to that point was facing back to my mom, turns around and tells her she does not work here. I can see my mother is a little bit put off as she realizes this girl has Down syndrome. My mother apologizes, saying she didn't intend to offend her, only that she had forgotten her glasses at home and couldn't really read the labels. The girl apologizes if she came across as rude, and then tells her it is not a problem and starts helping my mom find what she wants. At that point, I realize there's an older man walking towards them, also a bit panicky, so I start to make my way towards them a bit faster. My mom keeps on talking to the girl, exchanging comments about the layout of the food and how expensive some things have gotten. The girl continues to engage in small talk and laughs along with my mother's comments. The older man happened to be the girl's father and politely joined in the silly exchange of chit-chattery. When my mother finally gets what she needed, she thanks the girl for being so helpful and nice. Her father had the biggest grin on his face, and so did the girl. Later, I got to talk to my mother about this, and she confirmed that for a split second, she wasn't sure how to interact with the girl when she realized she had Down syndrome. She decided to just go along as with any other human being. To keep in mind, she is old and from an area where for a long time, children with disabilities would be hidden and considered a shame to their families. We also realized that the father was likely used to the awkward encounters with other people and her daughter, and was appreciative that everyone in the situation just engaged in a friendly exchange. His daughter was simply being helpful to an old lady without her glasses, and very kind at that, and I was glad to be a passive bystander to tell you the story. This is a very positive story, and it's a good example of how anybody should act regardless of how anybody looks or comes across. Like something Mr. Rogers would say, we all just want to be nice neighbors to each other. Our next story is by Foogastic. Apparently, I did work there. It's 2 p.m. on a Saturday about 20 years ago, and I'm nursing for a horrible hangover, like I did just about every Saturday morning, when the phone rang.
You're late for work,
I hear as I pick up the phone. Groggy, confused, and immediately worried, I answer back, "I'm sorry, I'll be right there." But as I'm speaking, I realize I have no idea who I'm talking to, and that it's Saturday. So I ask, wait, who is this? She answers,
It's Marcia, your boss. You're on the schedule for today.
now I'm really confused. I'm a software engineer. There's no such thing as being on the schedule, and I work 9 to 5, or sometimes 11 to 7 if I was out drinking, Monday to Friday. So politely I tell Marcia, whoever the freak that is, that I think she has the wrong number. She stammers a bit and checks that she dialed the right number. Then Marcia surprises me. She asks if I'm Foogastic last name. Confused, I say yes. She reads me part of my social security number. Now I'm fully mind blown, but it suddenly hits me. The week prior, I was out drinking early and ran into an old high school buddy who was bouncing at a bar. I grab a beer inside and head back out the door to talk. After a while, just to get off my feet, I sit down on the bouncer stool. Time flies by and eventually people start showing up. Because I'm sitting on the bouncer stool, they start handing me their IDs. I'm a little more than buzzed at this point, but good enough to act like I know what I'm doing. Turns out I get spotted by Marcia. She introduces herself and assumes I must be an employee she hadn't met yet. When she learns I don't actually work there, she offers me a job. Apparently, I accepted, filled out tax forms and other paperwork and agreed to a schedule. But per usual, as the night goes on, I proceed to get blackout drunk. I wake up the next morning with zero recollection of my new job. Fast forward to the following Saturday, and now I'm on call with my new boss, who's pissed at me for being late for my first day of work. I get honest. I tell her I got blackout drunk that night, was barely sober to begin with when I agreed to work there, and am so hungover I can barely move. She fired me on the spot. Relieved, I went back to sleep. I've heard a lot of stories of people regretting whatever it is that they did when they got drunk, but getting drunk enough that you accept a job as a bouncer, filled out tax forms properly, and other paperwork and agreed to a schedule for a job is probably next level to me, and probably evidence enough that you needed to take a long hard look at how much you're consuming. This next story is by DarthFuedalTheFirst. I got fired from a store I don't work at. I was 11. This happened a couple years ago, and it still brings a smile from my face every time I think about it. This story involves me, Karen, and manager. I was in a grocery store with my mom, and I went to look at the cereal aisle as kids do, and I hear a ahem behind me. I looked behind me, and there was a standard Karen. You probably know what they look like. And I said, "May I help you?" And she said, "Where is some alcohol drink I don't know?" I said, "I don't know, I'm not an expert." And she said, "Well, you should know because all employees should know." I was really confused at that point and said, "I don't work here." I was wearing an orange polo because I was coming back from a birthday party of one of my parents' friends, and walked away. 5 minutes later, she came back with a manager who started lecturing me about how I should know my stuff, and I started walking away, and he yelled at me that I would be fired if I walked away, and I did, so he shouted, "You're fired!" And I ran to my mom and browned her the story, and she said we were going home, and in the car we kind of laughed because it was so strange, and went home. Dang, dude. I'm really sorry to hear that you got fired from your first job at 11. Props for starting early, but what a shame. This was brought to you by the Sarcasm Corporation. Our next story is by M0V00MW. Me, I don't work here. Tour manager, yes you do, you're now backstage security for Yellowcard. About 6 years ago, on a Saturday night, I was setting up a concert with some friends. Now, this venue had two parts. The main part was a restaurant/bar with a big outdoor venue that could fit about 1,500 people. And across the street was the second venue that could fit about 1,000. I got confused as to which venue I was heading to, accidentally parked at the main venue, saw my mistake, and walked across the street to the intended venue. Now, I had worked late that day and couldn't go home and change, so I was wearing a black polo shirt and black pants. After my concert ends, I walk back across the street to the main venue where I had parked. I try to take a shortcut around the building, only to find myself blocked by temp fences and barricades. I look to my left and see a couple of tour buses. I head towards those and manage to walk in between them. I find myself in a loading and staging area with some hospitality tents and people walking around, while I'm hearing a band playing really close by. I grab a snack and a drink and ask a guy how to leave, and he points to the right. The only way to the right is this long ramp that leads around the building, so I walk up and follow it around the building, literally to the side of the stage where the band Yellowcard was playing live. I'm talking 10 feet away from me tops. As I walk up, somewhat confused as to the scene in front of me, this woman with a clipboard and a headset walks up and asks me where my lanyard was. I kinda shrug and say I don't have one. She gets pissed off and says don't move. She's back in 5 seconds with a lanyard and an all-access pass and tells me to put it on. I try telling her I don't think I'm supposed to be here, but she snaps and tells me to shut it. She says to stay right there to guard the ramp to make sure no one accidentally tries to come that way. Literally what I had just done, and walks away. So I spend the next 30 minutes on the side of their stage while they finish their set. After their encore, I head back to the hospitality area, grab some food, have a few drinks, mingle with some folks, etc. After a while, I see headset lady walking around, so I walk up to her, hand her the lanyard, thank her for the drinks and the show, and leave. So OP managed to accidentally stumble into free food, free drinks, and a very up-close view of the performance. Not a bad free gig at all. This next story is by JasperDBard, Drunk Karen Story. This took place before smartphones and the like in the late 90s. To understand the story, you must know that the company that printed the local phone books did misprint a local locksmith's number wrong in the book. Where we lived, all the numbers started with 421, 423, or 425, and my grandparents' number was 423, 5625, and the locksmith's was 421, 5625, which spelled lock. Ironically, I got to hear both sides of the story because my friend's parents were the locksmiths. Well, the solution so no one had to change numbers was the locksmith bought and installed an answering machine at my grandparents' house and recorded the following message. Hello, you have reached the residence of Mr. and Mrs. Jones. If you are trying to reach A1 Lock, there was a mistake in the phone book. Please call 421 Lock and we will be glad to help you. What we would just do was my grandparents would let everything go to the machine, set to only 2 rings, and if it was for them, we would just say something like, "Grandma, it's me, pick up," and they would then answer. Also of note, during the summers I would stay at my grandparents' house because I would help Grandpa on the ranch, and we would get up at 5:30 and it was just easier for me to stay there than him to drive and pick me up. Well, the summer after the misprint, at about 1:45 a.m., I hear Grandpa getting upset from the room I was in and went to see what was up. I see him on the phone repeatedly saying, "Look lady, you have the wrong number, call 421. After about the 5th time I hear him say that, he slams down the phone. To calm down, he tells me that he woke up to use the restroom and stretch his bad knee and heard the phone ringing. It would ring twice, the machine would get it, but the person was hanging up before it barely said hello and they would call back. So he answered to just tell them to call the correct number because apparently it must have been important because he heard it happen 5 to 6 times in a row. Once on the phone, a very drunken lady refused to believe that the phone company would ever misprint the numbers in the phone book and demanded to talk to the owner because she knows him personally. This entire time he is telling me this, the phone is doing the hang up and redial. With this being my friend's family company, I didn't want them to lose the business, so the next time it rang, I answered and told her I was just the after-hours phone service and got the location. She had locked her keys in the car and then just called the correct number, told them what happened, and gave them the information. Here is where the fun begins. The next day, after the ranch work, I went over to that friend's house, which was normal. We all kinda hang out there. While there, his brother walks up to me to tell me what happened when I hung up. Apparently before going, he called her to confirm the location, was outside a bar, and to approve the pricing of $35 for the unlock, plus a $20 after-hours service fee. She agreed, and he got in the van and went. Since this is very easy to do, it only took him about 2 minutes to unlock the car, but notice the woman was very drunk, and the key seemed to be a spare on a ring by itself. When she saw it only took him a couple of minutes to unlock the car, she refused to pay, saying he was price gouging her. He simply tossed the key back in the car, locked the door, and closed, stating she will have to pay a second unlock and service fee now. Her response? Call the cops and scream at him about how she is best friends with the owner and how he was going to get fired. He had no clue who she was and just let her scream without saying he is the owner's son. When the cops arrived, they took both stories and sided with him. They made her pay him all the money in advance before they let him unlock the car. She quickly grabs the key, hopped in the car, and started to drive off, only to immediately get pulled over for drunk driving the moment she hit the street. She even pulled back into the parking lot. It was so fast. Apparently, the bar had confiscated her keys for being too drunk to drive, and that was in fact her spare he got out. She was arrested for a DUI, and the police had the car impounded. Karma is a witch. Honestly, if you agree to pay for the service, the guy comes out and it takes the mere minutes to get your keys out? Isn't that nothing but a plus? Why would you want them to take hours to get your keys out? Why would that make you want to pay more? Wouldn't you want to pay more for them to get the keys out really quickly? That logic doesn't make any sense to me, but obviously, she wasn't making too much sense regardless. And our final story of the day is by Joseph C007. Milk was in short supply, apparently. Years ago, I used to have to wear a red shirt to work every day, which I hated. It wasn't even a retail job. I worked at a small call center too. I went to Target one day after work, and for those in the USA, you know Target employees wear a red shirt. A lady came over to me and started complaining that the milk is always sold out and why Target never has any. I told her, I'm sorry, I don't work here. She then said,
What, you off the clock and can't answer?
I again said, no, I don't work at Target. She then apologized and went about her way. Well, I hope she gets her milk somewhere. It's a shame that Target is always sold out apparently. I don't really get what complaining to a Target employee about sold out milk will do anyways though, but I'm glad that they left OP alone after only 2 tries of explaining. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So, which of these stories was your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing and turn notifications on if you haven't so you'll never miss an upcoming video. Any little thing that you do helps the channel grow so much more. Whether it's commenting, subscribing, or just watching the video, thank you all so very much for supporting me right here on the Storytime channel. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all next time, right here on the Storytime channel.